So what we're going to be looking at today is the print-to-me ability of the most plugin. The core product is Reform PDC. And what I've done today to kind of prepare for this demonstration is basically I went to our website and downloaded the installations right from our website. And they can be found at FabSoft.com. Clicking on downloads. And the three products that I've installed so far is Reform Enterprise, which again is the core product. Most, which is the plugin that allows us to utilize the Rico MFPs. And the Print-to-Me installation, which is kind of like an addition to most. So what I did was I've downloaded them and I've installed them. Reform Enterprise first, then most, and then Print-to-Me. And really the only reason I installed them beforehand is just to save on time, because sometimes it does take a little while to install SQL and .NET. So at this point, I basically have a clean system that I haven't configured anything on other than installing the software and entering an evaluation code. So the first thing that I would want to do is I want to start up my Reform spooler. And again, Reform is the core product, and Reform is really what's doing all of the processing of the documents. So to start the spooler service, I can just go to my Start menu and go under the Reform Enterprise folder and click on Spooler. And here you can see I entered my evaluation code. And at this point I can just minimize it. The next thing I would want to do is configure my most server. Since I haven't run most before, I need to configure the settings for that. And to do that, again, we're going to go to our Start menu under Reform Enterprise, and then under Most, we can see our Most Manager. And the Most Manager is really the server side of Most. Most has two parts, one of them being the server, and the other is the software that's installed on the MFP. So here we're just going to configure the server. And to do that, we're going to go to Edit and Settings on our Most Manager screen. And there's a few settings that we can take a look at. One of them is the IP address of the server, as well as the port. And these are just two pieces of information that you may want to keep in mind for later on. The LDAP authentication, in case we want to use LDAP to have users log into Most with their Windows username and password, we can enable this. And to populate the information, we have a fetch button here that tries to do most of the work for you. Currently, I don't believe I'm logged in on the domain. So for this demonstration, I'm just going to use a local user instead of LDAP. But basically, it works the same way. Print-to-Me allows you to print documents to basically any MFP that connects to the Most server. In certain scenarios, the MFP can connect to the server, but the server can't necessarily connect to the MFP. One example comes to the top of my head is if the server is up on the internet, the MFP may be able to reach the server to log in and do its work, but the server can't print directly to the MFP. And that's one of the reasons that we have an option here that we refer to as remote print. Remote print basically allows the MFP to request the document from the server. So let's say the server's up on the internet and it can't print directly to that MFP or the MFP's IP address because of the network scenario. Enabling remote print will basically tell the MFP to ask the server maybe every 30 seconds or 60 seconds. It'll check the server to see if there's any documents to print, and if there are, it's going to download them and print them to itself. So it's just one of the features of most that allows us to kind of make the printing ability work with different scenarios. So for this scenario, I'm going to enable remote print, and I'm going to choose my folder here. And by default, we typically use the Reform Enterprise I believe we use the Reform Enterprise Q folder. So now my server is started. And the next thing that I would want to do is basically configure my users and what screens they can see. To do that, I'm going to go back to my Start menu, go to Reform, Print to Me, and the first thing I need to do is install the Print to Me screens for most. And to do that, I'm just going to click on the shortcut here to do that. And when it asks if I'd like to import them, I'm going to say yes. And now I have my screens imported to most, and I can double-click on the Print to Me collection here to see them. And this is where we can see that we designed the screens. Now I want to take a look at the users and assign these screens so that the user can see them. And to do that, I just clicked on Demo, Users and Groups. And you can see that there's one user already existing in here, and that's installed by default. The user that I would like to create is, currently I'm logged into my system as administrator. So I'd like to create a most user that matches that Windows account. So I'm going to click on Add. And I'm going to type in my Windows information here. If I was using LDAP, I could add the domain users group instead of adding a local user. Since the system is currently not on LDAP, this is basically doing the same thing. Okay, so I've created my new user that matches my Windows username. And now I'm just going to look at my available collections. And you can see Print to Me is one of the options now. And if I click this right arrow, it's going to add Print to Me as one of the selected collections. So this column on the right is basically going to tell me what screens that the administrator can see. So when I log into my MFP, I'll be able to see the Print to Me screens. I'm also going to turn the login timeout to 0 so that I don't get logged out while I'm doing the demonstration. So now I can save the users and groups. And I'm going to minimize the designer. You'll notice in the Most Manager that it lets you know that the settings file has been updated because I added new users. And I can minimize that too. So now the software on the server side is basically configured at this point. And the next thing that I'd like to do is configure most on the MFP. To install most to an MFP, we have a utility that we refer to as the MFP Control Center. And to open it, again, we go to our Start menu under Reform Enterprise, and then Most, and Install to MFPs. And this utility allows us to install the Java client onto the MFP from a server. It saves a little bit of time without having to require you to go to each MFP individually. The first thing that I like to do is to configure the control center so that there's very little work to do at the MFP. So to do that, I'm going to go to Edit, Preferences, and I'm going to click on the wizard button. Now here I can specify the IP address for the MFP to connect to and the port number. And for what I'm showing you, the defaults are perfectly fine. So I'm going to click on Next. The default username I can leave blank because I don't want most to log in automatically. The login window linking I'd like to keep as username, password, and login. And finish. So now I can save my changes. And now I'm ready to install most onto an MFP. And here I can enter a range of IP addresses or a single IP address depending on the scenario. The IP address I'd like to use is 192.168.202. So now this is going to look at that IP address and locate the MFP, as well as tell me a little bit of information about the MFP. It's also going to allow me to update Java if it's required, or in this case, update most. And here we have here you can see the MFP that I'm actually installing this on. Most is currently running on it. And when I click on Next, you can see most is installed. But for what I'm going to show you, I'm going to actually update it or reinstall it. And to do that, in my MFP list, I'm just going to check the box next to the MFP I'm working with. And I'm going to click on Update Most. You can see at the bottom left corner, the control center has begun updating. And the MFP is currently restarting to uninstall and reinstall most. So at this point, it may take a few seconds for the MFP to start back up. One of the neat features about Print2Me is that when you're printing your documents from your laptop or your desktop, you're really printing them to the Print2Me driver, and any MFP that connects to most, whether it's located in the same location or a location across the country, as long as they're connected to the same server, you're able to print those documents down to the MFP that you're standing at. It's all based on the user account that you're logged in with, and if you enable LDAP, it's also secure in that it uses your LDAP authentication to allow you to browse your own documents. And while this is coming up on the MFP, I'm just going to print a document to the Print2Me print driver. And just like I would print to any printer, I'm just going to go File, Print. And I'm going to choose Print2Me. So now I've just printed a document to the Print2Me server so that anytime I log in with my account, I can then go and print it and retrieve it from the MFP. So here you can see the control center has just completed the installation. And if we scroll to the right, it says Successful Update. And if we look at the MFP screen, we can see that it's now sitting at the username and password login